Bear down, Chicago. It's the Bears Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Chicago Bears, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Windy City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From Soldier Field to the next great chapter, the Bears Squad Show starts now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Bears Squad Show here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. Joe George and Lauren Cox here with you as we are every single week, during the week, and then after Bears games as well. Lauren, one preseason game left to go. We got the starters are going to play. We'll get to that. How much we'll see, but they're going to be out there apparently. A new contract for Tyson Bagent, which surprised me, to be honest, even though we both talked glowingly about him after the last game. But Lauren, I want to start today with just what's your feeling right now going as we get closer to the ceiling? Are you feeling optimistic, hesitant? Like how do you describe how you're feeling about the Bears season right now as we get closer?
Yeah, I guess cautiously optimistic, but I find myself feeling a little bit more hesitant as we get a little bit closer, just as things start building up. Like I don't think I'm certainly not, predicting bad, but I think it's sort of a coming back down to earth of like, hey, things are going to be great. And now it's like, well, things are going to be good, but I still have enough question marks about a few different spots in this team that not that I'm like, oh, for sure that's not going to be good, but like still need to see a lot more and have some proof of concept here that like the moves they've made, some of them we already can see are going to work well. Some of them I still want to see a bit more.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think cautiously optimistic is a good way to put it, and then also feeling hesitant. And what I wanted to what I figured we'd go through today in this first segment is those reasons why. I feel like there are some specific players, position groups of just what are the concerning parts of the Bears as you head to the season that give us just the most questions. I'll start on this one. I think that, Terrell Smith, while a rotation player, probably at best is now officially out for the season. Jalen Johnson, we still have not seen. We've not seen Kyler Gordon in a while. There's a cornerback battle for the number 2 spot, but it just feels like the cornerback room at this point has a lot of question marks going into the season. And maybe it's just because Justin Jefferson's the first guy you play, but it doesn't feel great in that spot exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely something that has the potential to be a real problem, but I find myself feeling a little bit less worried there only because the Bears haven't responded to that position as though they're panicking or as though they're really worried about guys not being out there, right? We haven't seen them, with the exception of like Trey Flowers at the beginning of training camp when they knew Jalen Johnson was going to be out for a little while. We haven't seen them really go out and sign, a veteran free agent that you feel like is a sign of like, we need to get somebody in here who knows what he's doing, right? They swapped out some bottom of the depth chart guys because there were some injuries down there, but as much as Jalen Johnson's been out, now Kyler Gordon is, week to week, and Terrell Smith's out for the season, you could see a team saying, we got to go trade for a corner. We got to go sign, like Xavier Howard just signed with the Colts, I think, off the street. Like one of those type of moves feels more like a panic because we think something is really, really wrong here. But their lack of urgency at that position suggests to me that, yes, maybe Jalen Johnson or Kyler Gordon could miss a game or two, but that they're both confident in the guys that they have and also confident that the injured players will be back soon enough that it's not going to derail the season.
And I think, too, in general, when you talk about the defensive side of the ball and bringing in Dennis Allen, I think it's a fair assumption that he should be able to cover up for some of this stuff. You can't replace Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon, but can you put out a defensive scheme specifically against a rookie in week 1 in J.J. McCarthy that you should feel comfortable with, that he can find a way to make it work? And the answer feels like it should be yes to that question. That's why Dennis Allen was hired. That's what he built his career on, why he was a head coach in the NFL, going into last year. So overall, I do think that you're right. It's because they haven't really addressed the position like they have in other areas. It does give you a sense of a little relief, but still concerning. What's one area or position or player that you're concerned about going into the season right now?
Yeah, I think it's kind of connected to this, right? Because I think Dennis Allen deserves some real benefit of the doubt here until he has the right to lose that benefit of the doubt at some point. But like when he was asked about the injuries and the depth in the secondary and stuff, he talked about how, well, the secondary is not going to be good if the pass rush isn't good, and vice versa. And like, that's kind of where my concern lies, at least on the defensive side of the ball, where it's like, it makes sense that like, hey, if you have some injuries in the secondary, well, if your pass rush can step up and get to the quarterback a little faster, then you can mitigate some of those injuries in the secondary. But the whole plan, it felt like this offseason, was that the secondary was going to be so good that it wouldn't matter if the pass rush was a little slow, right? The idea was that they don't have a ton of proven production at pass rusher, but in theory, more man coverage and cornerbacks that are good scheme fits for that should be able to make the quarterback hold on to the ball a tick longer, which should help the pass rush be able to get home. Like, the secondary was supposed to be the thing that buoyed the pass rush, but now it feels like they need the pass rush to buoy the secondary, and now both groups are looking for the other group to help them be better. And at least for me, the secondary is a group that's going to get healthier and will be better. But with the pass rush, I still have a lot of question marks. I still need to see that group actually do it in a regular season game with starters out there against starting offense. With, we've only seen 3 snaps of Montez Sweat and Dio Dengbo this preseason. So I'm not saying that we've seen them not be able to do it, but we just haven't really seen them actually do it. So that's a group on that side of the ball that I think I'm still most concerned about.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, because it's just, and when we talk about the preseason game, like, do I expect them to play more than 3 snaps? Well, only if they don't give up a 3 and out. Like, at this point, I don't expect to see these guys out there a lot in the final preseason game on Friday night against the Chiefs. But you're right. If Montez Sweat, I mean, he's one guy that, in terms of what Dennis Allen was brought in here to do, it's specifically with him to unlock him, to make him into the player that the Bears really thought they were acquiring. And you've seen some flashes from guys like, obviously, Austin Booker's had a really good preseason for sure. And that's a rotational piece. And he's doing that against second and third string and fourth string guys. Like, what does it really look like against starters? And yeah, Crimson says here, it's almost like football is a team sport in the YouTube chat. You're right. Like, it is. Like, you need them to work together. But to Lauren, to your point, if the cornerback room is not, and the secondary room is not the strength that we thought it was going to be because of health, it does have a trickle-down effect to this team and to the linebackers too. Like, and we saw last year, it felt like really when the linebacker play fell off was when Billings got hurt. Like, that's where it was like, okay, they're getting pushed back into these guys, and they're not able to attack at the linebacker position like they're supposed to. So, yeah, the defense is there's definitely, I feel like, more concern on defense than offense, honestly, at this point, just because of overall health.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And it comes back to, like, there's 2 aspects of the coaching on this. One, it's scheme, right? Yes, can they align the front and blitz smartly and plan the right, coverage disguises to try and overcome some deficiencies? But then also it's just player development too. Like, can they make these players better than we've seen them before? Can they can they develop Tyreek Stevenson into a more consistent player? Can they get Nashawn Wright to live up to some of his draft status as pretty much a bust for the Dallas Cowboys, all things considered? Can they get Dio Dengbo to take that next step coming over from the Indianapolis Colts? Can Jerron Dexter continue to get forward? Like, it's not only just like scheme, but it's like the players that, like, that coaching and like teaching and player development side that I think we saw more of on defense under the previous regime than on offense, for sure. But I think there's still room for an even bigger step there by a better coaching staff being able to help in that area as well.
For sure. On the offensive side of the ball for me, and try not to be prisoner in the moment too much, because there's a lot of questions about health in the running back room. But the Bears did today sign Royce Freeman. So is this kind of what you were just talking about with the cornerback room? Is this a sign of how they feel about Roschon Johnson and where this running back room is as a whole? Or is it the fact that with Hankins, that he got hurt and he's out for the season? Like, is it just that, or does it mean more? So for the running back room, I'm concerned just in that I just don't know what to expect. Like, I look back to, again, what DeAndre Swift did in his 1 year with Ben Johnson. It was the least amount of carries he's ever had in his career. Obviously, Jamal Williams was a heavy part of that offense with 17 rushing touchdowns or whatever it was. And now you're bringing in guys, and the health is a question. I think there's just a lot of question marks about what that running back room is going to look like for the Bears.
And that room, to me, feels like if there's one position on the roster that you can most, I don't even want to say hide, if you can most, I don't know what the verb is there, that you can most overcome deficiencies at, it feels like that's the spot that you can scheme the most success with and find the most, like the most likely that find a guy you've never heard of that ends up being really good there. Like, to kind of have a diamond in the rough thing there. Like, it's a lot harder to just magically develop a pass rusher out of nowhere or develop a starting caliber cornerback out of nowhere. But we see all the time running backs like Royce Freeman, bounce around practice squads for a couple seasons, come in the right team, in the right scheme, in the right situation with the right injury, get in the game, and all of a sudden, they're not, Pro Bowl running backs necessarily, but like good enough to get the job done. I find myself feeling like the Royce Freeman signing is more about Deion Hankins than Roschon Johnson, only because Roschon's been hurt for quite a while now, and it's only once Hankins goes on IR that they bring in Freeman, who's a name, but also a guy who's been on practice squads the last couple of years. Like if they had signed Jamal Williams, who's been 1,000-yard rusher before, if they traded for Brian Robinson Jr., or if they made like a slightly bigger splash move, that to me would be like, hey, they're really concerned about the running back, like who running backs were actually going to carry the ball in the regular season. But I think Royce Freeman being on the team now is more about who do we want to be on the practice squad. He's going to be competing with Britton Brown, Ian Wheeler, and the guys at the bottom of the depth chart, as opposed to like, this is a signing for someone who's going to carry the ball a lot in the regular season.
Yeah, and to your point, what you're saying about the scheme, it's look what the San Francisco 49ers have been doing under Kyle Shanahan. Now, Ben Johnson has had success, as he's shown, with 4 running backs, with Swift, with Williams, with David Montgomery, with Jahmyr Gibbs. So can he bring some of that here to the Chicago Bears, and also like what the 49ers have done, where Jordan Mason feels like he could be a legitimate threat for the Minnesota Vikings this year. But also I have my doubts because some of these guys don't exceed as much. Like Raheem Mostert's a great example. He was okay at first when he went to Miami, when he left San Francisco, but he wasn't as impactful. So the scheme can cover up the gaps in the running back room. And that would be the biggest hope there. For you offensively, defensively, what's another concern you have with this roster at this point?
I think I'm more overall concerned with the offensive line than a lot of people. And obviously left tackle is perhaps the primary reason of that. But we still haven't seen this full 5-man Bears offensive line like actually be out there together and play. And I realize it was everybody but Tooney, and we know Tooney's going to be fine. So like I'm confident that the offensive line will be bare minimum good enough. Like it's not going to derail the entire season, but I'm not as confident that it is like fixed, 100% set, good to go, all problem solved. I need to see Jonah Jackson prove to me that he's a good player again, because it's been 2 or 3 seasons since we've really seen him do that at a high level. And then I want to see how Drew Dahlman fits in this offense and can see him stay healthy as well. And I want to see Darnell Wright take that next step. And then you get to the left tackle, where we're pretty sure Braxton Jones is going to be the starter, but it could be a former undrafted free agent in Theo Benedette. Like I wanted this offseason to be like, hey, no more offensive line questions. And yet I feel like we're approaching week 1 with a similar number of offensive line questions, just different ones this time.
Yeah, the Theo Benedette one's interesting just because I don't know if it makes me feel like good about their coaching that he's been put in position to compete for the left tackle spot, or more concerned that Braxton Jones has allowed it to become a competition at left tackle, that an undrafted guy has come into this situation. And Kieran as well has been passed over at the left tackle spot, who he took in the 3rd round, 2 drafts ago now. So I'm with you. I'm just curious what it's going to look like from start to finish. Like how healthy can these guys stay? We've talked about this a couple times on these shows where there's some age in this offensive line room. Like on paper or on Madden, it looks fixed, right? But when you actually see it, like what will it be? And I think we also have a reason as Bears fans and people that talk about the Bears on a daily basis to feel some level of concern, because it's been a problem for feels like a decade at this point.
And it just doesn't feel like they have a lot of alternate options. If things don't go well, or certainly if you add injuries at that position, like at least, in the secondary, you've got Stevenson and Deshaun Wright, like they're competing for starters. Like, okay. And Josh Blackwell has started some games. Like you don't love having them out there if you have to, but you could do a lot worse. And on the defensive line, they got a bunch of different defensive tackles where, if, they need to get some different players involved. They've got some options there, but along the offensive line, like you got like maybe one really good offensive tackle in Darnell Wright. And then if Braxton Jones gets hurt again, you're going to guys that couldn't win the competition in the preseason. And on the interior, you don't really have a lot of depth you love there. Maybe Ryan Bates can plug and play and fill a gap temporarily, but it just doesn't feel to me like they have any kind of margin for error up front on the offensive line. And like that kind of compounds the nervousness of like, I'm not sure if they're going to be great. And I'm not sure that they have a decent backup plan if they run into any kind of problems whatsoever.
Yeah. And I think too, it's let's say if you did like a scale of 1 to 10, like they're like a 2 or a 3 last year. I mean, I mean, they might be a 1 last year. So like, if you could improve them to like on that grading scale to get them to like a 6.5 this season, even with the concerns, it's such a significant improvement from last year to this year for protecting Caleb Williams and hopefully helping your run game out, that it should still look better. It's just, it does feel like there still could be a lot to be desired with the offensive line as we go through the season.
And to me, that's also going to be a big measurement of Ben Johnson's ability as an offensive coach and a play caller. That, we've seen many a coordinator can be good. If you have a really good offensive line and really good weapons and a good young quarterback, a lot of coordinators can run a pretty decent offense. But what separates maybe the great ones from the good ones is, hey, when your offensive line is struggling to protect your quarterback, can you still operate a high-level offense? Can you adapt, adjust, change your protections, get rid of the ball quicker, run whatever you need to do to overcome real weaknesses on your offense? Or do you need everything to be pretty well set with good, healthy talent in order to really be successful? I mean, no one can be elite with a really, really bad offensive line, of course. But like, I think the expectation should be that Ben Johnson can make do when things aren't ideal, and we still need to see that come to fruition.
Do you have any more? I got one more, if you
Go
don't.
for it.
The only other thing that, just because it's limited playing time, even though the whispers of this at camp have quieted significantly, I want to see the operation of just the offense in a real game. That for so long through this offseason, it has been delay of games and issues with Caleb Williams and other guys getting lined up. Just that part of it, obviously through 2 possessions, looks fantastic. No issues. Some issues with the second or third unit in the second half, but the starters didn't have that in the preseason. But can that hold up into the regular season? Would just be my only other real question at this point with the offense, I think.
Especially on the road on Monday Night Football against an aggressive blitzing Brian Flores defense. Like that's the concoction of like, oh, they're going to be tested in that aspect of the game right away. They're going to need to be on top of it right away in week 1.
Yeah, I mean it's not an easy task for Caleb Williams or Ben Johnson, and the other way too, it's not an easy task for Brian Flores, who obviously was a great defensive coordinator last year for the Vikings. But I saw someone asking, I think Pat the designer, who we had on last week, about like what film do you think they're watching? He said he was guessing the Lions film, but as Ben Johnson has also alluded to this week, it's a totally different ball game. Like this is a totally different offense, and he also said what we've seen in the preseason means nothing, basically. That it's a old playbook he just uses in the preseason, which honestly, Lauren, just made me more excited about what we're potentially going to get in the regular season.
Yeah, it is going to be hard for them to prepare. I mean, I think you kind of have to look more like, as opposed to like scheme, it's more like individual players. Like, okay, what has Caleb struggled with or not, and try and attack that, as opposed to like what Ben Johnson's going to call specifically, because some of that you just really not going to be able to predict or know exactly what it is. You can kind of piece together some ideas of like, okay, how he might use these players, but I don't envy them trying to figure that out for week 1.
All right, we'll take our break here. We'll continue talking all things Chicago Bears. We did one of the first ones we did these. There was some Micah Parsons trade rumors. Well, now we know Trey Hendrickson is on the block for the Cincinnati Bengals. Do you have any interest in acquiring him, especially with what the price tag apparently is for the Bengals? We'll get into that next year on the Bears Squad Show. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And you've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the work out of buying tickets. I love the seat views in the app. It's huge for, I think, if you're going to Wrigley Field for the first time or you're recommending someone to go, because there's those giant cement poles that can get in your way. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So, Lauren, when we went through the Micah Parsons stuff, it was, hopes and dreams, and it's a fun trade to discuss, but always felt unrealistic. Now, feels like that relationship hasn't gotten any better between the Cowboys and Micah Parsons, and maybe it's still on the table. Ian Rappaport suggested our nightmare, which is that the Packers are the right fit for Micah Parsons if a deal were to come to fruition. But now Trey Hendrickson is reportedly on the block, and the Bengals are actually listening to offers, unlike from the Cowboys. He's 31 years old, so he's a little bit older. You're going to have to pay him right away. So in theory, with draft capital, it's not going to cost you as much. So if the Bears can make the financial work, what would your interest level in be investing in a player like Hendrickson?
Yeah, it's tricky because, like, of course, a 17 and a half sack guy doesn't become available all that often. And so you would feel foolish to just dismiss and pass up on the opportunity to get that caliber of player because you just don't see him very much. And yet, is that exactly in line with what the Bears need? Like, of course, you can just pick him up and drop him on the roster, sure. But if it costs you, an early draft pick, and it sounds like the Bengals want like a young defensive player as well, all of a sudden, is the short-term gain worth the long-term loss there? And I mean, the answer probably is still yes. If you're confident in getting, say, 2 or 3 more good years out of Trey Hendrickson, I think that could be worth it. But it does start to depend on, like I've seen people throw out a Tyreek Stevenson in the deal, but you're so injured at cornerback. I don't know that you can absorb trading away Tyreek Stevenson right now. So then you're on Dexter, like another young defensive player. I don't know where else you're looking on this roster. Jaquan Brisker has another expiring contract, but you don't have a lot of good depth to just like give up a good young player on defense that would be good enough for the Bengals to want to take the deal without you having to give up, a bunch of really good picks in exchange.
Yeah, it's if they want a defensive player, it's harder to figure it out. I mean, let's see. Crimson says here in the chat, doesn't want the Bears to spend any draft capital bringing someone in right now. Totally fair. Justin says, give them a 4th and Kieran. Don't think that's going to get done, unfortunately. But I like where you're headed, Justin, because what if they ask for Braxton Jones? Like, the Bengals have offensive line problems. I mean, we just talked about the left tackle issue. They're like, hey, we'll take a 2nd, a 5th in Braxton, and you get Trey Hendrickson. Like, if that was on the table, like, that's the kind of deal I would be wanting to make if I'm the Bears. That's only obviously if you're confident in your left tackle situation, which they're probably not right now.
Well, yeah, that's one of the challenges here. Is like if Braxton Jones is barely beating out your backups here and dealing with some injuries along the way, like it's hard for me to want to sacrifice anything that could negatively impact Caleb Williams' development. Like, ultimately, that to me is even more important than the number of games you win this season. Is like, are you getting this quarterback to become your franchise quarterback? So, like, unless it's a true backup offensive lineman like Amagaji, which, like you said, wouldn't be necessarily enough there. I'm not sure there's a young player on offense I'm willing to give up that would have enough value to the Bengals to try and make it worthwhile. So, like, to me, the only position you have the kind of depth to give up a young player would be defensive tackle. But I again, like, Zach Pickens isn't going to be enough for that either. And even someone like Braxton Jones in the last year of his contract, or Jaquan Brisker in the last year of his contract, like, that's the Bengals would then have to hand out a new contract to somebody else instead of Hendrickson. Like, and I could only imagine them finding themselves in another bad situation of like, oh, now we got to negotiate with this guy and are still having trouble coming to terms on the right deal.
Yeah, that's the Bengals. It's one of those where they're such a kind of dysfunctional organization while also having some success recently that it's hard to figure out what they would do. That one does feel, of the two from like an NFL perspective, does seem to be the one that feels more likely to me that Hendrickson is moved before the start of the season than Micah Parsons. I still can't really wrap my mind around the idea of Micah Parsons being not a Cowboy with how great of a player he is. Hendrickson makes a ton of sense. Like, they're a cheap organization. They just spent a ton of money at wide receiver for both Higgins and Chase. Like, Hendrickson being moved away and hopefully to anywhere outside of the NFC North does feel likely to me at this point.
What would you think about, and I don't think this would probably be the case, but like a Montez Sweat swap? You may have to throw in some kind of, I would assume, I mean, I don't know how to even handicap that value, because on the one hand, you think Hendrickson is the guy who gets 17 and a half sacks a season, so he should be more valuable in a trade than Montez Sweat. But the Bears would then have to pay Hendrickson, so that decreases his value, and Sweat's already locked into a contract. So it feels like straight up doesn't feel just right, but I don't know exactly what, Hendrickson, Sweat and a late round pick. I mean, I don't know exactly what that would look like, but does that move the needle much? You just kind of trade out your best pass rusher for an older version who's better, but enough better to be worth it, because it's going to cost you a lot more too.
Yeah, and you're gonna have a bunch of dead money on your books from moving Sweat on. So that's where, like, to your point, like, what's the formula to get this thing done? To be honest with you, though, like, my initial reaction, because I didn't think of that, Lauren, was absolutely. Like I would absolutely do that. If it was, I would go probably as high as like a third round pick, I think, with and Montez Sweat because of all the money implications with it. But if the Bengals called and said, "Hey, we want someone under control that's a player that we don't have to worry about paying again, that can come in here and not be as good, can be an 8 sack guy, not a 17 and a half sack guy," it helps them fix their problem a little bit. And then it gives the Bears someone that really could be that game wrecker that they don't have right now. I think when you think about this, it's, yeah, you want to have both of them on the roster, but if it ended up being only Hendrickson over Montez Sweat, that'd be awesome. I would be, if you could call them today, Lauren, and act as Ryan Poles, I would highly encourage you to do it.
Yeah, the only thing I wonder about there is like a locker room leadership kind of response. I mean, Sweat's certainly not like the rah-rah vocal guy, but he is the guy who they traded for and paid and said, like, here he is. Here's our shining example. Everyone do like Montez Sweat. I mean, he has a leadership position and role, even if it's not, like Grady Jarrett's kind of more the voice, but Sweat's a little bit more like the face and the body of that defensive line. And so I just wonder if it's disruptive to team chemistry in some way if you move on from Sweat there. But I do see the other side of it is like Dennis Allen drafted Trey Hendrickson, right? So there's a known commodity aspect there that, like, oh, there's not many concerns about like what his personality is like or how he'll fit with the coaching staff or what his work ethic is like. Although I do wonder just a little bit that Montez Sweat Trey Hendrickson really only had one good year with the Saints and then all of his success with the Bengals. So I do wonder a little bit there if there's anything to that, or if it's just some players are a little bit of a late bloomer and take a while to really break out. He was a third round pick, not a top 10 pick by any means. So I just wonder if there's anything there. Like, hey, he was a backup and didn't really do much for most of his Saints career with Dennis Allen.
The other thing I was thinking about too, Lauren, with the idea of trading for a guy like Trey Hendrickson is we've seen Ryan Poles be aggressive during the season, trading second round picks for Chase Claypool and then Montez Sweat, of course. So this is one where actually, if the Bengals don't have the season that they're expecting because their defense isn't good again and they're struggling, or even if they are having some success, but they decide, as we get closer to the deadline, like, hey, we got to get some kind of asset in return for this guy before he walks out the door because somehow they convinced him to play this season. That's the kind of move that seems more logical to me. If he doesn't sign with the Bengals yet decides to play, Poles could be aggressive in season if the Bears are in the right position to go out and acquire him for a second half of the season push.
Yeah, I wonder because right, the real challenge there becomes financially, like how you work from there. But it made me think, like, is there a scenario and a price point where you would be comfortable trading for Trey Hendrickson without signing him to the contract extension? Like, if he would, just to get him out of Cincinnati without guaranteeing the contract extension, that he comes here and plays the second half of the season, and then if he walks in the offseason, you still get a compensatory pick for him because you traded for him. And so if he could be worth, say, a third round compensatory pick as a free agent, would you trade a third round pick for him straight up at the deadline to boost you for the final 8-9 games of the season? I don't know when the deadline is anymore, but like knowing that in theory you'll get that third round pick back, but it wouldn't be, I think, until the following draft. So then so I guess could it be a future third round pick? Like, is that worth it is there a scenario where a short-term Trey Hendrickson rental is worth it at a certain price if the team is doing well enough and you say, wow, they're just like that one splash pass rusher away from actually, making a deep postseason run?
I think if they're looking really good in like this offense, like in a perfect world, Caleb Williams has arrived. He is on par with Jaden Daniels. He is, really showing why he's the number one pick, why Ben Johnson's been the hottest commodity. You're rolling. You feel like you can win the North. I would be comfortable going up to like a second rounder because if you're really in that position, if you really are, and you locked up Montez Sweat, but remember there was a time like it didn't feel like that was going to happen when they initially made the deal, and there was some like, why did they make this move if they weren't going to lock him up? Eventually, the Bears did. If they're in real position to win, I'm fine with it. Like, to kind of compare it to what I'm watching on a daily basis, and it's not a great example because Kyle Tucker's been benched, But like the Cubs traded one of their best prospects away for 1 year of Kyle Tucker. And my whole mindset was always, look, if you make the playoffs, which they haven't done since 2020, and if they make it to, I was hoping for at least the NLCS, feels unsustainable right now or unattainable right now. If they were to get to the NLCS, I'm like, it's worth trading a prospect away for that. I would kind of view this the same way. Where like, if the Bears is like, they can get out of the wild card round at a minimum, play 2 playoff games, I would feel okay giving up a second rounder, knowing that a compensatory pick is also coming later.
I find myself feeling like third round is the round I want to trade because we've seen Bulls be so bad in the third round and actually do. So it's like, is there any way we can like do just third round picks and kind of keep him away from even drafting in that part of the draft? Because he's really nailed the second round. I mean, I know it's a little bit beside the point here, but like,
I love it though.
It's been a money spot for him so far. So it's like, I want to keep those as best I can. But again, at some point, if the team is up at that point where it's worthwhile to leverage the future for the present, like you strike while the iron's hot. And I think that's, to bring this full circle, I think that's why we're so hesitant now, because we're not sure if the team is really there yet. Like we still need to see it. It's why maybe the trade deadline, we would have a bit more clarity about, is this team onto something special in year 1 of Ben Johnson, or is it going to be, still transitioning into the new scheme? And then, year 2 of Ben Johnson next year, 2026, that's when you make that big splash move.
What you mentioned it earlier, but Brian Robinson is reportedly, going to be on the move. It feels like he wasn't even at the Commanders' last preseason game. Is that someone that, I mean, like to me, like not even thinking about it, like that's a much later round draft pick because it's a running back. But like, was that someone you would want to be interested in? He's been fine in his career.
Yeah, I think the tricky part for me with Brian Robinson is that I don't have much interest in like giving him a big contract. So then am I just trading for 1 season of him, or is there a I mean, it depends. Like we don't really know exactly what kind of money he's looking for, but like I'm sort of envisioning the Bears in this transition point at running back anyway, where this offseason they probably make DeAndre Swift a salary cap casualty, and if Roschon Johnson doesn't do anything again this year, then they're not going to count on him. Like we're probably looking at next offseason having to make a big running back switch anyway to a new starter. And I'm not sure that Brian Robinson is that guy that I want to like give a big contract to and give up a draft pick for. So yeah, a super late round pick for 1 season of Brian Robinson, sure. But anything beyond that, I'm not necessarily locking myself into him in the long term.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in trading for a running back unless, again, like it's that late round pick. Your running back room will be fine enough. I realized today how much, I don't know how I'm going to describe myself here, unbearable I'm going to be looking at mock drafts. I looked at my first one already today. Field Yates put one out, and I was like, all right, where's Jeremiah Love? Where are the Bears? Why did the Bears not take him at 17? Like where they haven't predicted. I was like, that's to me. I'm like, I'm already bought in. No matter where the Bears pick, that's who I want.
And somehow it feels like it's going to be a little bit of a rerun. I mean, free agency will change things probably, but like right now, it feels like it's going to be a rerun of last offseason where it's like, give me the pass rusher, screw the running back in the first round, give me a good pass rusher. And we went through last draft and didn't get either one in the first few.
I know.
Well, we're going to be doing the same conversation of like, do they take Genty or Shamar Turner or Shamar Stewart? I mean, in the first round, like, or can they trade up for one of the pass rushers or one of the running backs? And then of course they'll take something completely different and they'll draft a corner in the first round next year. And we'll all go, oh, of course, they're still going to do it again.
Ironically enough, that's what Field Yates had. He had them taking a cornerback out of Tennessee to replace Tyreek Stevenson and help secure that position there. So I was like, I get it, but at the same time, we want the fun stuff also to be happening at some point. All right, we'll take our break here. When we get back, let's continue talking about the Bears. What do you want to see in preseason game number 3? Because the starters are playing. What do you expect to see? What do you want to see? Are you upset they're even playing? We'll get to that next year on the Bears Squad Show. Today's show is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. I play in a Yahoo Fantasy league, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guarantee Leagues and a killer new way to play Yahoo Fantasy Football where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. How surprised were you when Ben Johnson said the starters were playing?
That's a good question because he was hinting at it
Yeah.
a bit earlier in the week but he was still going to try and figure it out. I'll say I was surprised. I guess not stunned because he'd left the door open. I think had he not left the door open, I would have been a bit more stunned. If you had asked me a week ago, are the starters going to play against the Chiefs? I would say no way. They're not going to see the field at all in that third preseason game. I still tend to find myself giving Johnson the benefit of the doubt and saying like, should they be or not? I mean, he knows better than us whether they should be or not, at least for now. But I do find myself disagreeing with the decision to play them. I don't know that there's. I think the rationale he started giving made sense up until the point of them actually taking the field.
Yes. I don't really get it. Is it really worth it for one possession to because that's what I think it's going to be. I would be shocked if it would be more than one possession for them. I mean, I guess it could be two, but it's like, what are you really getting out of that besides just another opportunity to risk injury? And I know you can't prevent everything from happening. Like guys are going to get hurt. Lamar Jackson's fine, but like his ankle got stepped on today at practice. So it's like anything can happen, but it's just another opportunity. Now, it does sound like the Chiefs are going to be doing the same thing, or like we're going to see their starters going out there for a little bit. So maybe it's a little monkey see, monkey do kind of a thing here where it's like, well, if Andy Reid's doing it, maybe I should do it. But I was shocked to hear them that they're going to play.
Yeah, like I want to pin on that for a second. Like, if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, aren't you pulling your hair out if Patrick Mahomes is playing in a third preseason game against the Bears? Like,
yes.
What are you doing putting that guy anywhere near the field in a preseason game? Like, it's Patrick Mahomes. If there's anybody who shouldn't be out there, it's Patrick Mahomes. Like, you can say the 1%, 2% excuse of like, oh, the Bears are still young and they're still learning. Like, okay, maybe there's some minuscule value to them being out there on the field, but I just don't understand Patrick Mahomes having any sort of real value of being out there. But again, like Andy Reid has won Super Bowls, like what, 4 Super Bowls are there? I lose track of the Chiefs Super Bowls, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
He probably knows better than we do, but it's really, I'm just like wrapping my brain around why would you ever risk Patrick Mahomes in a game that doesn't matter? Even if the risk is low, there's the gain. He's not going to become a better quarterback having played 5 snaps against the Bears in the third preseason game. And I feel fairly similar about Caleb Williams. What is one drive going to do for him? And you can say, well, then what's the real injury risk of one drive? But again, like if there's not much benefit, then why have any risk at all?
Let's see. Crimson says here in the chat, I want to see the same thing you wanted last week, timing, effort, and discipline. Justin says one drive, more running game. I want to see how our line is. I think that's a good point just to see. I mean, but Joe Thuney's not going to be out there. So like it might be 4 of the 5 again that are there. But if they're going to play, what do I want to see then? Well, I want to see what I saw last week. I want to see a touchdown drive. Like whether if it's 2 possessions that the Bears offense is going to have, I want a touchdown drive in there. I want to see them move the ball up and down the field, clean operation, getting the ball out quick, do exactly what you did last week against the Buffalo Bills. Do it again. So if you're going to play, like make it worth our while a little bit.
Yeah, I totally get, like, if you want to put the starting offensive line out there, that makes a lot of sense to me. That's a group that needs to gel, needs more work together, and still hasn't named a starting left tackle just yet. Like, I'm cool with select starters playing in the game, but like, I don't think Caleb Williams really needs to be out there. I don't think DJ Moore needs to be out there. I don't think DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet need to be out there. Like the young guys and the starters that are still learning and growing and meshing together, I'll give you some of that, but like, I'd love to see more than just Joe Thuney sidelined here. It just to me feels like I don't know what these guys are supposed to gain. Like I understand when Ben Johnson said was at the start of this week, I think, where he's like, it's nice to have them like going through a road game, right? Going through the process of getting the stadium and staying in a hotel on the road. Like the first 2 preseason games were at home, so everyone's kind of had the nice, easy home experience. So he's like, I see some value in the starters kind of going through that on the road because I think I guess Monday night's at home, but they're going to have road games early in the season, right? I get that, but all that value for me stops the moment you snap the ball. Like nothing is different. Like there's value in preparing as though you're going to go out in the field and doing warm-ups and everything, but then once the opening kickoff is kicked, there's not really much difference between Caleb Williams taking that snap under center at home versus being on the road. So then the value is only, you think, 5 more snaps of practicing in a preseason game situation is worthwhile. And I'm still left lacking a reason why that is so much better than just sitting them out and getting more practice reps as a result.
Yeah, because if they were playing more significant time, I think it's a different argument, because it's like, okay, if they're out there for, obviously it's changed now with the preseason structure only being 3 games, but if it was the way it used to be, we're in the 3rd preseason games, we would see starters out there for teams for the first half of the game. If that's what the Bears were doing in this game, I'd be like, okay, I get that more. But to do only, 2 series or whatever, and this is an assumption. Like, we could be wrong. They could be out there for more than that. They could be out there for 1 possession. So that's where I'm with you. I don't quite get it. I know I'm not a coach in the NFL, obviously, but if I was, I think I would have flipped this the way Ben Johnson's doing this. Like, I think I would have had them play in the 1st and the 2nd game and then sit out the 3rd game. But instead, they're sitting out the 1st and playing the next 2.
I think part of that process for him was that I don't remember the exact timeline here, but they either just finished or weren't quite finished with all their installs by that first preseason game. They had 12 days of install. And I think if I did my timing right, it was like the joint practice was one of the first days when they were like really done with installs. So everything was so fresh and new that I kind of understand him saying, hey, like, we just finished installs and haven't had a lot of time to go back through stuff yet. So maybe let's leave the starters out and not sort of give them the test of a preseason game instead of just sort of the safety of practice there. But then by the 2nd preseason game, everything's been installed. You had a full week plus of kind of going back through stuff. And I think that's how they looked so sharp against the Buffalo Bills. And I can see where now you've had a chance to go over those plays again. And so you really want to see another opportunity against the Chiefs. So like, now we've had a couple of weeks of really hammering this stuff home and look for that improvement and that progress, I guess. But it's a short week. You're barely going to get to practice before the game anyway. Like, how much is there really to gain? I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here.
No, it's fair though. I was surprised too. I just didn't think we were going to be the way, Ben Johnson had been operating so far. And look, we're all learning what Ben Johnson is like as a coach, and it might not be this way next year. Like, this might be what you're talking about, the way they installed it and like putting all these new things in, a new offensive line. If in theory this Bears offensive group is largely the same going into the start of the 2026 season, it might look very different. From a player perspective, I'm curious about a guy we've already talked about now once on the show, but what is Royce Freeman's role? Because I think that gives us an indication of where the Bears are at with the running back room. If he's pretty much out there from start to finish and he's the only guy running the ball, then he's literally just a body to help you get through the game. That's the only reason why he's there. If it's more of a mixed bag, like maybe it's just a little bit different.
Yeah, it kind of depends on I guess they're getting him now quickly enough that he's going to have 2 or 3 days to learn the playbook and get in. I mean, it's going to be tricky there because I could kind of see it either way, where it's like, well, we'll just keep it simple for him and then run him a lot. Or they'll say, well, he's maybe not quite ready for more and more action. But I think if I'm Royce Freeman and I just got here, give me as many opportunities as I can, because I got to take advantage of every little snap you'll give me to show you I belong back on the roster on the practice squad. And some of this could be dependent on Kyle Monungai's health. I think I saw that he didn't participate in practice on Wednesday today as we're doing this. So I'm guessing they won't trot him out there on Friday against the Chiefs. So then if you're not going to use Swift, Roshan's hurt, Monungai's hurt, and then probably not going to use Travis Homer. I mean, they didn't use him in the last game, so we'll see how that goes. Then all of a sudden you're kind of forced to use Royce Freeman a little bit in there because you only have him, Ian Wheeler, and Britton Brown, and there's only enough. You can only use each running back so much before they start to burn out a little bit here. So I think we'll see those guys involved in the backfield quite a bit.
Yeah. The only other thing for this preseason game that I'm really, really curious about from an offensive perspective, from who makes the roster and who doesn't, is does Taylor Scott show enough to make this roster? I was looking at some 53-man roster predictions, and I think he was off of all of them that I've read. And I feel pretty safe saying I agree with that. It was like, could he find a way to sneak into this roster to make the Bears keep 6? But overall, I think, for the main position groups, it's pretty cut and dry of who we think is going to make this roster and who's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think the offensive tackle question of do you keep Theo Benedict and Amagaji and Ozzie Trapillo? That would be 5 offensive tackles. Doesn't seem like it to me. So that's one that I think I'm going to want to see how it plays out. And even some of the other interior backup offensive linemen for me. But yeah, it's really pretty much the trenches and then injury questions from there on how many running backs and how many cornerbacks they keep based on who's healthy and who's not, and who's going on injured reserve and who's not at that stage of the process. But it does feel like it's more about practice squad spots being fought for in this game than actual 53-man roster spots. Like, I wouldn't imagine that this third preseason game, is that going to be the difference between keeping Zach Pickens or not? He's played a ton in the first 2 games. I don't know, even if he has 3 sacks in this game, does that drastically change your opinion of him? Or if he does nothing in this game, like, is he going to be way better or way worse based on one preseason game? It feels to me like pretty much everything has been decided at this point. And it's just a question of, does anybody else get hurt? And does that change how you kind of finalize your was it 13 people on the practice squad now?
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the eventual going down to 2 preseason games? We're still getting to know each other a little bit. 18 games, 2 preseason games feels inevitable at some point. But from like a watching perspective, I'm like, fine. And to your point, like, do they really need this preseason game to figure out who's going to make this roster? I think 2 is going to be okay eventually.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like, I struggle because, well, I guess they would, as long as they replace it with a regular season game, because all the NFL cares about is the money they make from these.
Yeah.
But the regular season game, they'll make more money from these. But we've clearly seen the trend growing that coaches largely prefer the joint practices anyway, as something that they don't have to keep it as vanilla, because they're not going to play that team in the regular season, and there's no all 22 film going out of what you're calling, so they can run more of their true stuff at those joint practices anyway. So I think there will always be some amount of preseason games, but I don't think they're going to the fight won't be, oh no, we don't want to lose this preseason game. The fight will be, players better get a higher percentage of revenue if they're going to take another regular season game. And that's going to be the real obstacle in the next CBA negotiations.
Yeah. Which, I mean, my biggest pet peeve with the preseason right now, Lauren, is I can't believe they take a week off. I just wish it was time to go. Like, it's that week off is such a bummer. Like, now we get some great college football games. They're going to help, cover that up a little bit. But like, I'm right. Once this preseason game is over on Friday night, I wish the Bears were playing the following Monday. Instead, we have to wait till the Monday after that for them to actually get underway. All right. The Bears surprised us a little bit today. A contract extension for Tyson Bagent. When we get back, we'll discuss just our thoughts on the deal happening and a little bit from Tyson, some quotes coming out from him today at the podium talking about this as well. We'll get to all of that next year on the Bear Squad Show. All right, 2-year deal, $10 million, can go up to 14, I believe it is, for Tyson Bagent, 16. I was surprised, honestly. I just didn't see it coming that they were going to get a deal done this quickly because of what Ben Johnson said today at his press conference, that Tyson could be a starting quarterback in this NFL. In his opinion, it's a big endorsement, but instead they lock up their backup quarterback situation for the next couple of years, and they're pretty secure now.
Yeah, I was surprised too, because he would have been a restricted free agent this upcoming offseason anyway. So, they could tender him at a fairly significant contract, and then also if a team, really came around and wanted to offer him a big deal, they could match that. And so I guess I get saying, hey, let's lock him in at this price instead of whatever price another team might be willing to pay for him. But at the same time, like, I think he could be worth even more if another team decides that, and maybe another team might not say, hey, this guy's played really well in the preseason, so we're going to give him a big contract. Like, I think this to me is a little bit more about just saying, hey, let's send a message to our locker room that we reward guys, especially, the undrafted free agent stories of guys who earn their way and earn it the hard way, and they weren't draft picks that came in. Like, this is more about a $10 million message than it is like a genius getting ahead of a big salary that could be coming in the future for Tyson Bagent.
Yeah, and it's right in line with what you see from a lot of backup quarterbacks. I mean, Jacoby Brissett comes in at $6.2 million, Tyrod Taylor $6 million, Jared Stidham is $6 million. So it's pretty much kind of the average, I would say, that you would see, besides the guys who are backups that are low-level players. But it's the right move just to have something secure there, because as weird as it's one of the most important positions in the NFL, and we see 60-something quarterbacks play across the league last year. You need to have a competent backup, because at some point over this contract, Tyson Bagent will have to play valuable snaps for the Bears. It's just the reality of the NFL. Like, you will need him to go out there for a 3 to 4 week stretch over the next 3 years or so, and need him to be able to help you win football games, or at least be competitive.
And I think it says a lot that Ben Johnson, in such a short amount of time with Tyson Bagent, has reached that comfort level to say, yes, let's give this guy a huge raise relatively to his previous salary and lock him in for a couple of seasons. Like he hasn't seen Tyson Bagent in regular season action with Ben Johnson as the coach and calling the plays, right? We saw Tyson a couple of years ago, but like otherwise he's just been a preseason star, and preseason stars don't get big deals. So like to me, it says a lot about Ben Johnson's confidence in him that they didn't have to give him this deal. Now they could have played out the whole regular season, then given him a big contract extension before he even hits free agency, right? It wasn't like there was some deadline they were facing to get him a deal or else he was going to get to test the market. So the fact that they get this before he even, I mean, he could go this whole season and never play a single snap.
Yeah.
And, you know, we wouldn't have seen anything more of Tyson Bagent to command a big deal. Like this is purely a representation of preseason and practice, and that doesn't always happen. So it feels like it says a lot that just this small amount of time with Ben Johnson has equated to a really big contract extension for him.
Do you know the answer to this question of who was the last Bears quarterback to sign a multi-year contract extension?
I did see the tweet earlier today, so I'll let you deliver it.
Jay Cutler. That's so sad.
2014. Was that the 7-year, $100 million deal that he signed back then?
Yeah, I think so. That's so sad that 2014 was the last time. Tyson better not be. The next one better be Caleb. That's all I know. I'm pretty confident it will be. But the fact that you've gone, more than a decade without a quarterback signing a multi-year contract extension is crazy.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised somebody like Chase Daniel never got like 2 years in there somewhere along the way. Not that he was great by any means, but just someone that you could see them saying, oh yeah, we'll keep him around for a couple seasons with our other young quarterbacks. But I'm glad Andy Dalton wasn't the answer to that question either, because you could have seen them say, oh yeah, we'll give Andy Dalton a couple of years on an extension too. But it's just like, no, it goes to tell us too that like so far they haven't been wrong about not giving any of those quarterbacks extensions. I mean, I think jury is maybe still out on Justin Fields. I'm willing to say jury's still out on Fields, but like they weren't wrong to not give Mitch Trubisky the extension. He hasn't gone on to do anything. I mean, any of these Bears quarterbacks so far haven't proven the Bears wrong, and it's not encouraging per se, but at least you don't want to be wrong twice, right? You don't want to pick the wrong quarterback and then have him be great somewhere else. At least you can be wrong once and then right about being wrong the first time.
Yeah, Justin's the only one. I mean, he's going to start in this year for the Jets. We'll see how it goes. Feels like it's been a roller coaster of a camp for him this year to see like what he can do, if he can keep his career rolling at this point. The other thing I like about this, and you kind of alluded to it, was just taking care of your own. Like that's something the Bears in this recent stretch, it's been kind of a question of would they do that? And I feel like since Jalen Johnson got paid, that's been put away. You secured Jalen Johnson, you secured Kyler Gordon. You've now given Tyson Bagent a contract. Like I'm still annoyed they didn't pay Roquan Smith, to be honest with you. Like I still don't like that transaction occurred. Like a player you drafted was that awesome. You should have kept him, and they didn't do it. So I hope that this is also a sign of Ryan Poles. Like we're going to pay our guys. We're going to keep our guys that we draft and develop. And even if they're backups, we're going to secure them to be a part of this roster.
And I wonder, I want to get your opinion on this in sort of a weird roundabout way. Do you think signing Tyson Bagent to a contract extension that does raise his salary significantly almost like legitimizes him more as a backup quarterback and maybe in some ways would increase his trade value? Like it's one thing. I feel like if a team, just perception wise, if another team were eventually to trade for Tyson Bagent on a undrafted free agent rookie contract, that wouldn't feel like a very legitimate quarterback move for that team. It's like, oh, well, we're just trading for some former UDFA that's worth a 7th round pick at most. But yet there's something about like, oh, he's making $5 million a year. Like now he's a legitimate NFL backup quarterback that if a team traded for, like in a weird way, like you'd have to give up a little bit more for him, despite him also costing you more on your salary cap, because like, oh, now he's in that echelon with the guys you mentioned earlier, the Jared Stidhams and the Zach Wilsons and Tyrod Taylors of the world, as opposed to, oh, we can find any undrafted free agent quarterback that costs about as much as he did. So even though he's clearly better than almost all of them, there's just this perception of like, now he's legitimate because he has a salary that reflects that.
Yeah, like let's say like the Saints screw this thing up this year and win too many games and, push themselves out of the Cade Klubnik and Arch Manning and Grant Nussmeier conversation. And Tyler Shuck, though, is still terrible, or whoever the quarterback is, Spencer Rattler. And they called the Bears and were like, hey, we want to trade for Tyson Bagent. Well, I think the first thing their fan base is going to do is they're going to go back to the Ben Johnson quote today from saying he could be a starting quarterback in the NFL. So to your point, yeah, I think it does raise his perceived value a little bit because he's on a good deal and he'd be locked up for a little bit. So if you wanted to move him, if you got that call, it would give the Bears a little more. Like the Colts potentially could be another one of those teams down the road that might be calling.
Do you think this contract extension means Tyson Bagent will only be here for 2 more years? Because is he going to sign another contract extension as a backup? Because he kind of had to now because he was a restricted free agent, right? He kind of knew that, hey, I'm not going to be able to go anywhere anyway. Let me take the bird in the hand. They're giving me $5 or $10 million. I've been a UDFA. I'll take the money now, right? But after 2 years of this, he will be able to enter unrestricted free agency. He won't be as, I don't want to say desperate for money, right? But like he will have made some NFL money and now be maybe more willing to say, okay, now that I've secured my financial future, I want to go pursue a starting opportunity somewhere. Like does Tyson Bagent sign another backup quarterback contract after this with the Bears? Or does he say, once this deal's up, I want to go compete to start somewhere?
He apparently was very emotional today when talking about like the life-changing money that he got, and the Bears reached out a week ago to kind of address part of what you said. But no, I don't think he's here. I'm assuming he's gone. Because again, unless he doesn't play well. Yeah. But regardless, I don't think he'll be on the Bears after this contract because it feels like it goes one of two ways, right? Caleb Williams gets hurt for a 3 to 4 game stretch over the next couple of years. Tyson comes in, plays really well. Someone wants to trade for him in the offseason, or he then thinks he can take the job of someone else in the NFL, or it goes poorly and the Bears say, okay, we probably can't keep investing $5 million into a backup quarterback when at that point, Caleb Williams' contract could be worth $70 million. Like by the way this thing's going up right now, like he could get a $70 million contract. So it's a good deal for Bagent now. But yeah, I think it'll be his last one with the Bears for sure.
It's like a weird thing of like celebrating and then also being like, yeah, actually this probably legitimately marks the beginning of the end. I mean, it's probably understandable that the end was probably already going to be relatively near in the future either way. So this just more formalizes it. Like whatever his next contract was going to be with the Bears was probably always going to be his last contract with the Bears in either way. And I think it's a smart observation that yes, in both kind of the positive or the negative, like he would have to be like just average enough to like, he would play in a game and be okay enough to stick around as the backup in the future, but not good enough to look like a future starter in the future. But he's talked before about he wants to be a starter in the NFL and he prepares like he's going to be a starter. And Ben Johnson says he's going to be a starter. So I think we got 2 years of Tyson as the backup, and then he's going to go probably be in a quarterback competition somewhere, kind of like Justin Fields did with the Steelers a couple years ago. Like that kind of next step where he's not going to get handed a starting job for his next team, but he'll be the Daniel Jones to somebody's Anthony Richardson.
I mean, at this point, honestly, isn't it just a safe bet to say he'll be with the Pittsburgh Steelers at some point? Because that's where Trubisky goes. That's where Fields went. Like, it's like one of Caleb or Tyson went up on the Steelers at some point.
Head coach Press Taylor is going to bring him, or not Press Taylor, Declan Doyle. Head coach Declan Doyle is going to bring him to the whatever team. I was going to joke like the New Orleans Saints, but they just hired somebody to the Cleveland Browns. Head coach Declan Doyle will bring Tyson Bagent to the Cleveland Browns in 2027, and that will be his future starting role.
He's Lauren Cox. You can catch him Monday through Friday right here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel with his normal 30-minute show. We're here with you guys. We'll be going back to Tuesday starting next week here, these hour-long squad shows, as well as our Bears post-game shows that will continue again this Friday after the preseason game number 3. So thanks for watching. Remember, hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. For listening, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. We love you guys as always. So thank you for listening. Talk to you next week. Peace.